All right, so today we're diving into the story of a musician who is seen in two totally opposite ways. We're talking about El Makabelico. Now, depending on who you ask, he's either a dangerous criminal or a self-made artist. So how can both be true? Well, we're going to dig into these two very different stories and see what the sources have to say.
And that really brings us to the big question here, right? Is this guy a genuine artist just telling his story, sharing his reality, or is he basically a mouthpiece, a propagandist for a really violent group? It's not a simple yes or no answer. So, you know what? Let's just look at the evidence from both sides.
Okay, let's start with the first side of the story. And this one comes from a source that makes some incredibly serious claims. There's really no beating around the bush here. The accusations are heavy.
So this source just comes right out and says it. They directly link El Makabelico to the Cartel Del Noreste. And they don't just call it a cartel, they label it a terrorist group. This is way beyond just criticizing his music, you know? This is a flat-out accusation of being involved with a criminal organization. And they don't stop there. The language gets even more intense. The source straight up calls him a criminal and a terrorist. I mean, those are incredibly powerful words, right? They carry a ton of legal weight, and it leaves zero doubt about how this source sees him.
So if you look at it from this angle, his music isn't really art. It's a tool. It's seen as propaganda, plain and simple. Something made specifically to boost the image of the Cartel del Noreste. This completely reframes his entire musical career as basically a criminal enterprise.
Okay, so that's one side of the coin. Now let's flip it over. What about El Makabelico himself? How does he see himself? To figure that out, we've got to go straight to the source, his own lyrics. This is the picture he paints for his listeners. And right away, in his own words, he pushes back hard against that first story. He completely rejects that criminal label. Instead, he frames himself as an empresario, which means a businessman. This idea is really the foundation of his entire narrative.
So to really get a handle on this self-portrait he's creating, we got to look at the themes that keep popping up in his music. There are a few key ideas he comes back to again and again, and they really build this image he wants the world to see. Let's break them down. All right, so you've got four main things that show up all the time in his songs. First, this incredible loyalty to his family. Second, his whole journey as a self-made entrepreneur. Third, all the tough times he's been through. And finally, this focus on faith and building a legacy. Let's dig into some actual lyrics to see what that looks like.
Okay, check this out. That family theme, it comes through loud and clear right here. He's talking about his mom, showing this deep devotion. He even calls her mi jefa, my boss, and promises she'll never lack for anything. And that line, her blood is mine, wow. It just anchors his whole identity in his family.
And here, this is where that whole entrepreneur and overcoming hardship story really comes to life. He talks about starting with literally nothing, selling his own CDs out of the trunk of his car. I mean, it's that classic rags to riches tale, you know? All about the hustle and the hard work. And then there's this, the theme of legacy. He's talking about his drive to build something that's going to last, even if nobody believes in him. And when he mentions his heirs, it really suggests that his motivation isn't just about him. It's about the future, about providing for the people who come after him. So, what are we left with? We've got two completely different pictures of the same guy. On one hand, a dangerous propagandist. On the other, a dedicated family man and entrepreneur. Let's just put them right next to each other and see how crazy the contrast really is. I mean, look at this. It's pretty striking, right? The accusation is terrorist. The self-portrait is entrepreneur. The accusation is criminal. The self-portrait is family man. Propagandist versus artist. These aren't just slightly different takes on the same person. These are like fundamentally opposite identities. There's no overlap. And honestly, that's really the heart of it all. The sources we've looked at offer zero middle ground. They give us two versions of Makabelico that just can't both be true at the same time. You've got the outside accusation, and you've got the story he tells himself. And they just do not line up.
So this whole thing leaves us with a much bigger question, one that goes way beyond just this one artist. When music is about a life tangled up in crime, where do you draw the line? At what point does it stop being authentic artistic expression and start becoming straight-up propaganda? It's a really tough question, and the story of El Makabelico really forces you to think about it. It's definitely something to chew on.